Okay, welcome to today's lesson. Our learning intention for today is that you're going to be able to graph linear equations. We're actually going to talk about the three different forms and hopefully that you can graph in all three forms. So we want to be sure we get started by first covering what our success criteria is going to be. And so these are the three things overall that we're going to learn. The first one is that you can identify the parent function of a linear equation. The next one is that you can identify the three different forms and that you can use that information to graph. So that's going to be our success criteria. So let's get started. So our first one again is that you can identify the parent function for linear equations. Now most of you think of the slope-intercept form as being the parent function, but in fact that's not what is considered the parent function. The parent function is the function that goes through the origin. And so what it actually looks like is y equals mx. Y equals mx. Now, a lot of times you won't see it written in that form either. You see it actually with our function notation, which is f of x equals, and a lot of times you'll see a k there instead of an m. So either way, but basically it is simply saying that y equals x. So that is our basic parent function. Y equals x might be 1. So a graph in which the slope is 1 and it goes through the y-intercept or the y-intercept of 0. Or you might see it f of x equals x. So that's the basic form that you're going to see on there. So of all of those, this is going to be the main one that you're going to see more than any of the others. Is called the parent function, this one right here. Okay? So f of x equals x. Now, we're going to go on to our second, which is to identify the three forms. And also that once you've identified them, that you can graph with the given information. So each one gives us something different. We're not going to change them from one form to the other. We're going to use the form that they're in and show you how to graph. We're going to start off with what is standard form. Now, let me go through this if you would, and then I would tell you to back up and write the information down. So first off, standard form is in ax plus by equals c. And here is a key. Both a and b cannot be 0. So you can have one of them 0. In other words, you could have ax equals c, or you could have by equals c. But you cannot have 0 equals c, because then that wouldn't give us a line. So ax plus by equals c. That is considered our standard form. Now, when you go to graph, what we're going to do is we're going to find both the x and the y-intercept. Now, remember, the x-intercept, guys, is the point on the x-axis where the point where it crosses the x-axis. And everywhere on our x-axis, what is true is that y equals 0. So we're always going to write this as some letter 0. Okay? Now, in particular, when you look at your equation, if y is 0, okay, so I'm going to just take real quick and I'm going to cover this up. So if y is 0, if I had this equation, I would divide both sides by a. So a lot of times we say it's c over a. Okay, c over a. That's what it's going to be all the time. Okay? Now, if we're looking for the y-intercept, okay, that's where it crosses the y-axis, and what's always going to be true is that x equals 0. So in this case, if x was 0, then that term would eliminate, and our value here would be c over b. Okay? Now, is it necessarily that you memorize that? No, because I think once you start the equations, you'll automatically do that, but that is by definition. So again, if you haven't written this down, please pause the video and jot down those notes. Okay, so I'm assuming that you've already jotted the notes down and we can go ahead and get started. So the easiest way that I like to show you to do this is we just write down our we'll write down our points. So we're going to let x be 0 and we're going to let y be 0. The order in which you write those, it really doesn't matter, but that's what I'm going to do for each one of them. So again, If your x is 0, then that term disappears. Okay, it's gone. So in this case, I would just need to divide both sides by a -1. You can mentally do this. I don't expect you to write this all out. I think you can mentally do it. That's the whole point of us trying to use this form, make it kind of a shortcut, if you would. So we have a -4. Okay, so that's if x is 0. If y is 0, then the second term is eliminated, and I'm just going to get x equals 4. I don't even have to do anything. Okay, let's go graph it. So I'm going to graph 0 and -4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to graph 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then I just need to draw the line. Okay, and that would be my answer. Now, let's talk about checking our graph, because one of the things that you should be able to do also is to check points on your graph. So in this case, when I'm looking at this graph, you should be able to note that I didn't quite draw mine correctly, but all of these points are on your graph. See how that makes a straight line? And so I could put in any of these points. So this point right here would be 1, -3, and I could put that in and see if it works. So that would be 1 minus a -3, and then the question, is that 4? And it is. So all those points on that line should make the equation true. Again, you can check yourself. You know by now that I talk about checking yourself a lot. Okay, let's keep going. So the next one, again, let's set up our zeros. And it really doesn't matter. Sometimes I just put the x one first because then that's the one I cover up first. So I cover up the x, it's 0. So again, I'm going to divide both sides by 5. So I get a -3. Let's go to the second one. Again, same thing. I would watch what I'm doing, and then you can go back in and fill it out. Put in a 0 for the y. That term is eliminated. So x is a -15. Now that one's not going to be on my graph, I don't think, anywhere. So that's kind of a problem. And we will talk about what happens when they're not on the graph. But what I can do is, instead, so that I get it on here, I don't have to make my graph go by 1. I can actually make my graphs go by 2. So we're going to pretend this is 2, 4, 6, 8. So, and again, -2, -4, -6, -8, -2, -4, -6, -8. I'm just going to mark some of them. So that would be 2, 4, 6, 8. Now you don't have to have your x and y axis the same. I'm just going to do it that way. And what might have worked really well is for me to have gone by 3s. I could have gone by 3s and that would have worked. So I have 0, -3. Okay, that's the way I'm going to get these all in here. And -15. So -8, -10, -12, -14, -16. That means it's going to be right here. Okay, and then I'm going to draw the line. See if I can on there, because I kind of got my eyesight and the. Anyway, that's pretty bad. You guys need to get a straight edge. I can't do mine with a straight edge here, so let's see if I can get it a little bit better, because that was pretty poor. There we go, a little bit better. Okay, and there's my graph. Okay, let's try the next one. Again, 0 and 0. So again, if x is 0, I'm going to divide both sides by a -4. And so that would be 3. And then the next one, we're going to let y be 0. Divide both sides by 3. That would be a -4. Okay, so let's go to our graph. This time I'm going to be able to go by 1s. So we're going to go 0, 3. And we'll talk about numbering of our graphs and so forth. You really do need to always, especially unless you're using 1s, put some numbers on there, but it never hurts to put numbers on all of them. -4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. And again, draw your line. Okay. And I do expect you to use a straight edge. I can't use a straight edge on the computer here. There's not a line feature. If I could, I would. Okay, so again, be sure that you have those filled out and worked, and then again, go on to the next one. Okay, so on this one, it is a we do, and I'm going to ask that you pause the video. I would like for you to go ahead and graph all 3 graphs, and then I'm going to go through them fairly quickly just to see if you actually do know what you're doing. So you saw me do them. Now I want you to pause it and try it on your own. Okay, so I'm going to run through these real quick. Again, I'm going to set up my zeros. When I let x be 0, I'm going to need to divide by a -1, so that gives me a -10. When I have my x being 0, I'm going to divide both sides by 2. That gives me 5. I'm going to go to my graph, and I have 0, -10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There you go. And 5, 0. And again, connect the dots. Okay, that's what your life graph should look like. Okay, next one. I'm going to let x be 0. I'm going to divide by a -5. That makes it a -4. Next one, I'm going to let my y be 0. That means I need to divide both by 4, and I get 5. Okay, and again, this is where I say I don't really expect you guys to show much work. You should be able to mentally. Now, if there's some fractions and things like that, yes, definitely, you're probably going to need to go out to the side and do some work. But if they're pretty simple, you can divide in your head, do that. So we have 0, -4. We have 5, 0. And again, we draw our line. Okay, next up. We're going to let x be 0. That means I'm going to divide both sides by 8. And what is that? That is, oh, that one's not going to go even. I'm dividing by 8. So 4 negative, and 4 times 8 is 32. That leaves me with 4 left over, so 4.5. And you can use your calculator. Okay, so the next one is we are going to let y be 0. So we're going to divide both sides by -6. And we get 6. Okay, so I have 0, 4.5, 1, 2, 3, 4.5, and 6, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, draw my line. Okay, so that is solving using standard form. And we're going to go ahead and make another video that is on y-intercept.